What's up? It's your boy with the shitty camera. What's up guys, and welcome to today's video topic, which is 5 GM mistakes. Just to help you out with some of those mistakes some early GMs might do, or even some more experienced GMs might do. I've definitely done some of those myself. I'm gonna present you 5 GM mistakes and help you to not make them, I guess. And I hope you enjoy. So number 1 of the GM mistakes would be over-influencing your players' characters and backstories. But regarding that point, let's start with something you definitely should do, which is explain your world. You should, of course, explain the world the players are creating their characters in, the things that exist, does magic exist, and all that stuff, if that isn't already included in the rulebook, and stuff like that. Which enemies are there, which kind of cities, which kind of culture. So you definitely should give them an idea of which world they will be living in, so that they can create a fitting character for that. But something you definitely should not do is directly influencing the players' characters. For example, you should not create their characters mechanics-wise or even at all, so just leave all the character creation to the players. They will thank you later on probably for that, and you should also not write their backstories or even try to fit your own kind of storytelling into the backstories of the characters. Because when you're writing their backstory and creating their characters, it just leads to a big disconnection between the player and their character, and it'll make it a lot harder for them to roleplay their characters and have fun playing them, because they don't really know their inner goals, they don't really know how to play them and how to develop their characters, and it's just not a good idea to do as a GM. So as a rule of thumb regarding that, I'd say you should always explain your campaign, but regarding the player characters, only pose questions to them, maybe to motivate them to even explain further on the character's motivations, or maybe even think about some other kind of aspect of the character, or answer questions that they pose to you. Because when you do that, you'll always be on the safe side, and you'll always have characters that are purely made from the players themselves. So moving on to GM mistake number 2, which would be giving out XP separately, or in other words, making players level up unevenly. When you're giving out XP separately to each player, for example, the strong barbarian warrior charges into battle while the other ones just stay back because they're maybe afraid of the battle or something, and he manages to kill some more people than the others do, or something like that. You would give him more XP than the other ones. And this sooner or later leads to players being at different levels in game. This on the other hand just makes encounters unbalanced at some point. You will have some players who are at a higher level who will have to do a lot more work in combat to fight the enemy or achieve the goal, while the other ones might just stay back or be afraid of getting one shot or anything like that. This can lead to weaker players who get kind of bored or disconnected from combat because they just can't keep up with the higher level counterparts of their group. So my advice, if you really want to give out XP separately, would be this. Definitely make sure you're creating enough events for your party members to get their own share of XP. What I mean by that is that not only does the barbarian who charges into battle first will get his own XP for being the best fighter in your group, but also the intellectual mage who stays behind, maybe reading some runes where others already went on, would get his own share of XP while studying the runes on the wall, you know? So get every one of your player characters enough XP so it kind of balances itself out. Regarding balancing, what you also should do is giving lower level characters more experience for the same encounter than the higher level characters. Which also makes sense, because when you're a person with less experience in a certain area and you're doing the same job than someone who's more advanced than you regarding that area, you would probably learn more from that, so it's not even unrealistic. GM mistake number 3 is a very important one in my opinion, which is not creating enough side events, or in other words, not creating a living world. So when you're only creating people, events, cities, whatever, which are only bound to your main quests, whenever your players might want to get a look of what's going on beyond that, your world just will feel empty and lacking. Also, when your plot has a lot of tension, you might want to have the plot continue on without the players doing, so they'll get the idea that when they're doing something else, the plot might continue and they might miss out on something which could be relevant in the future. But focusing more on these side events, when you're creating an area, always think about who would live there, which kind of people would be traveling through there, which kind of native species might even live there, and also which kind of political, ecological, or even social relationships would be existing there between the kind of people that are living there. Because when you know that, you can always have animals walking around in your world and you'll know which ones, or having some fantasy creatures just walking around doing their thing, you know. It just creates a much more living world, and it also gives the players something else than just the main plot to rush down. But for each NPC or creature you're creating this way, always think about what their main goal would be, or what they would do in their spare time. Maybe even what their relationships to other NPCs, creatures, and all of that stuff would be. Because that just makes the characters feel way more alive, and you'll also have a better idea of how to play them. Alright, so we're already at GM mistake number 4, which would be creating plain encounter areas. What I mean by that is that you should not always have this open kind of battlefield where your players fight monsters and creatures, because that's not only kind of uncommon when you're not just fighting in an arena or something, but it also makes combat a bit less interesting. For example, in the wilds you could always have bushes and trees and all that, which would give cover to enemies and players as well, but you could also have thorny plants on the ground that are like difficult terrain. They could also damage the players and enemies as well. And this just not only makes it much more interesting, but it also makes it a much more memorable experience, and the players might remember this fight a lot longer than if they were just fighting on a big plain with nothing on it. And I think it's the right way to go. So you should always try to make diversified battlefields. For example, when the players did something stupid in the past, you could always say, alright, the enemies get positional advantage. You could also do it the other way around, you know. You can have the players ambush someone, you could also have the players being ambushed by some enemies. It just makes combat a lot more exciting, and also gives the players the idea that also the enemies are using tactics to overwhelm them. You could even take it one step further and make the environment around the fight create events that then could happen at any point in your combat, and it also gives you a bit more possibilities to influence the fighting. For example, when there's a fight in some underground caves, maybe there are some native insects that then will crawl out at some point and start attacking both parties. Or when they're fighting in the vicinity of a watchtower, at some point the guards might show up and try to de-escalate the situation. You really have a lot of possibilities there, and it's nice to think about some of them before the game starts, to just know how you could de-escalate or further escalate some things. What you should definitely keep in mind though is that you should not overdo it with the events, but what you should do in every encounter, I would suggest, is having a diversified and interesting battleground anyways. And at last, GM mistake number 5, which is not giving your players any reason to follow your main quest. Because having a main quest is one thing, but getting the players to actually follow it is another. While you may be able to rely on some kind of players to just go with the flow, follow your main quest, with some other kind of player it might not work out that way. For those kinds of players you might need some role-playing motivation, so you can make them do what you want to. So you just not only give them hints over and over again, but give them concrete motivational reasons to follow the quest that you're presenting to them. The best possibility for that is to make it seem like achieving the quest goal would bring them closer to achieving their personal goal from the backstories. Because if possible, you should always try to include your characters' backstories to give them motivation. So those were 5 GM mistakes. But I do have one bonus mistake for you, which would be not subbing to my channel. Because how else would you know about those mistakes? So do it. Do it now. Do it now. So anyways guys, thank you a lot for watching. Also, I'm thinking about making the pen and paper roleplay videos a regular thing, with them being uploaded every Sunday. So if you'd like that thought, also maybe give a like, and I'll see you in the next time. Goodbye.